2 days, and I promise you I'm going to keep this very brief, because this is a lot. Just to share with you, I've had some really interesting conversations with lots of people over the last few days, but in particular, I've had a few conversations with students from SMU, from other young people, and I found them really, really inspiring. This morning I was talking to a couple of them and asking what they thought were the sort of main issues, particularly for young women, young Singaporean women today. And she said, well, really, we see ourselves as equal. We have the same opportunities, and we choose the roles that we want to play. And I thought that was a lovely distinction between opportunities and the roles that we want to play. So I just wanted to share that with you in particular, that's been a real delight interacting with students here. It's my first time in Singapore, and I always think that the first time you visit a new place is an invitation really to sort of see yourself in a new way. And my sense of Singapore is that it's a place of great confluence and of juxtaposition of many different world views. So, and of course, I've come in from the UK with my own world view, and so I've had the opportunity to kind of pause for thought and to rethink my own identity, and to think about what I'm not, because often when we meet the other, you get to see the gaps in yourself. So, I'm not an activist, I'm not a feminist, interestingly. That's slightly sort of didn't surprise me, but it's something I haven't had to think about for quite a long time, actually. I would probably describe myself as a humanist if I had to think of some kind of political stance to take. But in essence, I think that I'm a seeker of pleasure and of joy, and a giver of pleasure and joy. And really, that's what I'm interested in. And I mean pleasure and joy in the fullest sense of delight in self and in the other. I wonder what the world would be like if our primary intention was to drench each other's worlds and each other's lives in delight. What would that look like, and what would that feel like? So, having said that I'm aware that I'm here from different contexts and with a different worldview, I want to share with you some thoughts and insights and some of my own experience as well, and I'll let you do the translation for yourself. And I'm sure that things will get mistranslated and lost in translation, and actually I think that those gaps are really interesting, because those are the gaps that sometimes there's a little piece of ourselves that is waiting to be found. I'm interested for today in the self-care of leaders. How do people in positions of influence and power look after themselves? If you're in this room, then you're in a position of influence, of relative influence and relative power. And if you're in this room, you probably also have a really strong commitment to making the world a better place. Right? You want to make the world a better place for everyone around you and for your communities. And my question, or my core invitation really to you, is to make sure that you look after yourself first. Because when your cup is overflowing, then you can really nourish other people. Just to tell you a little bit about the work that I do, I work primarily with people who are in leadership positions or positions of influence. I coach, and I also work with groups, and in particular I work with people to help them have more fulfilling intimate lives and more fulfilling love lives. Most of my one-to-one coaching clients are men. On balance, I would say I have about a 50-50 balance of men and women who come to see me. They are people from the world of finance and the world of entertainment and sport and politics, largely. And these are all people who really are used to taking responsibility for their lives and making really big decisions and working with a lot of people. So I feel very privileged to have had a lot of insight into how leaders look after themselves, or perhaps don't look after themselves, and often actually forget to do that. Because if you are really interested and committed to making the world a better place, it's really easy to forget about yourself. The other thing to say, just sort of for context, is that my approach is very much a coaching one, not a therapy one. So I don't tend to deal with trauma and the raw end of things. I deal with much more with fulfillment and pleasure. So yesterday I mentioned the idea of tearing up the good girl script, which is something that I work with a lot, in the context of helping people to think about self. And I wanted to unpack that a little bit. For me, I think that largely the issue for women is that we were brought up to be good girls. And there is a parallel script for men, which is that they were brought up to be real men, and therefore, to detach and suppress and move away from their emotions, which actually, interestingly, creates pretty much the exact same set of problems. But when I say good in this context, I mean being good to please somebody else at your own expense. So that's the bit. And I think that will continue to play out. When it continues to play out with people who are in positions of influence, actually the ramifications and the knock-on effects of that can be quite serious. So for me, the juxtaposition is between one of being good at your own expense and being able to stay centered in yourself so that you can be genuinely happy. So it's not about being good or being bad. It's about either sacrificing yourself and being good, playing a good role, or choosing to be happy. And the sense of not sacrificing yourself and making sure that you don't give up something of yourself in your looking after of other people is something that I think is really important. Just a little bit about how that plays out in my own life and how it continues to play out in my own life. So my first career was as a dancer and choreographer. I loved it, I had a great time, I was very good at it, and then I decided I needed a change. And it was interesting, in that time of change, in deciding to set up my new business and my new work as a fashion coach, I met with a lot of resistance from people who loved me very much, but were so attached to my identity as a dancer that they didn't want me to do this new thing. And that was a moment when I really had to choose very strongly to be happy rather than good, because I had people in London who were, really influential in the dance world saying, you can't stop dancing, that's not, this is what you're meant to do, this is what you were born to do. I still today have people saying to me, that is what you were born to do. And it's quite a thing to be able to stop hearing that and to hear yourself and to know that actually I've done that and I need something new. Out of that space, I looked at all the things that interested me and fascinated me, philosophy in particular, and how we share ourselves, because really, to me, sexual intimacy is not really about sex, it's about self, and how we share the self with the other person. Philosophy, the body, emotions, and beauty, and creative passion coaching from that. Now, in terms of then setting up my business and running it the way that I want to, again, one of the things I've learned to do is to really listen to my own intuition, I guess. I remember recently somebody asked me, where did you get your business sense from? You have a really strong business sense. And, I never went to business school, I can't add up. Don't do any of that. And really, it's my intuition. I've got very good at listening to my own intuition. And so when the received wisdom says, you've got to create a website straight away, or you've got to start doing this, and you've got to start doing that, I won't do anything until I absolutely know. Yesterday, a couple of people asked me, how do you know what it is that you really want, especially when you've got lots of options, whether it's in your personal life or in your professional life. How do you know which to choose, especially when lots of things seem quite attractive? And I think that ability to really connect to what it is that you want on a deep level and to stop hearing the other voices and the other pressures, if you like, is important. So that's good girl as opposed to happy woman, and when you're happy, you can genuinely give to others. In terms of, just to touch on participative leadership, I don't want to go into this massively, we've sort of talked about it a lot, but I think that if whatever form of leadership you take, that sense of self and being centered in self is important, but particularly for participative leadership, I think, yes, listen to other people, but really, if you're going to be a leader, as opposed to anything else, then it really is important to listen to yourself. And I think something that I have found very useful over time, and I think might be really useful here, on a philosophical level, is the sense of connectedness. And for me, it comes from the cosmology of yoga and tantra and Indian philosophy. And in essence, very, very briefly, it says that each of us as individuals are individual, but we are also part of the whole around us. Okay, that's the brief précis. And really, I think the trick is, and the great skill, is to learn how to see your own desire and your own needs in the context of everybody else, and to know that there's a difference between a compromise and finding a genuine solution that actually works for everybody. You know, you often hear this thing that, oh, in relationships you have to compromise. Well, you don't actually. You need the different way is to find resolution. In terms of actual behaviours, it means making certain decisions where you choose one thing rather than another. But there is a big difference between constantly compromising, and in any compromise, both parties give up something of themselves, and finding a resolution. And so for me, the idea of being an individual and being connected to the whole, when you're able to have that real sense, it's a really useful way forward. And in fact, to me, that would be my definition of participative leadership if I am to give one. So I hope that's useful for you. Just a couple of other things, and then I've sort of left time maybe for a little bit of discussion, because I think that's where the juice really is for me. Again, yesterday somebody asked me, well, you know, what are the sort of tools that you use? One thing that I absolutely swear by is living in partnership with your body. So in 2006, I made a decision and a commitment to live in partnership with my body. And it stands me in very, very good stead. And what that means is that I check in with my body about how it feels and what it wants and what it doesn't want. And actually making those decisions, making business decisions and all sorts of other decisions, I check in here. I check in what's going on in my feelings and what's going on in my body. It also means that the choices about food and sleep and all of those things, I really listen to myself. And again, I said yesterday that your relationship with your body is the most intimate one you'll ever have, and it's also the only truly lifelong relationship you'll ever have. So it's good, you know, to get that one in order. It's actually a really good place to start. Again, people who are looking after other people and leading other people, you're so looking out there all the time. Important to look inward. The second thing is to make sure you take time for solitude and silence. In fact, in December, I spent most December in silence, not in solitude because I stayed at home, but I literally spent a lot of time just being very quiet and very still. And it's amazing how much you start to hear yourself more when you're very quiet and very still. And you get to access, I think, a level of wisdom that you don't get when you're speaking to other people, because there's the relationship that comes in. So that's the second thing that I do. And finally, and you know, going to sum it up, be tender with yourself and look after yourself. And always remember that if you are going to look after other people, make sure you're looking after them from an overflowing cup, not a half-empty cup. Thank you.